Hello, I'm Gillian Spragg, celebrating on October the 1st, 2020, the International Day of Older Persons. I'm a musician and I've just played you a prelude for the piano by the composer Chopin. This prelude was written at about the time he was going on holiday to Majorca, and it's a joyous piece full of anticipation and excitement. So, feeling full of anticipation and excitement, let's think, who are these older persons? The International Day of Older Persons is 30 years old this year, but 30 seems a bit young for an older person. The United Nations suggests 65 as the starting point for becoming an older person. 65. Now, just for a moment, imagine that you are 65 years old. Maybe you are 65 or close to that age. If you're currently 50 years old, you will be thinking now that you would be adding 15 years to your age. If you're 40 years old, you'd add 25 years. And if you're 15 years old, you will be 50 years, half a century older. Of course, if you're 100 years old, you have already spent a whole century alive on this planet. So, how do you think it would feel when you're 65? How do you think your inner feelings would be different? Or maybe things would just feel just the same. While you think about that, I'm going to play you another piano piece by the composer Chopin, but now a different sort of piece from the piece I played at the beginning. So this is a sadder, darker, even angrier place to be, and we all feel these negative, depressed feelings, as well as our joys and happiness. And Chopin wrote this sad piece right alongside the joyous piece that I played at the beginning. So again, imagining what is it like being 65, an older person? How do you think it would be for you? Or do you remember being 65? Happy or sad, or a mixture of the two? Perhaps it would depend on the circumstances that you find yourself in. Here are two photos together. On the left is Chopin, the composer, and on the right, one of my oldest friends, formerly a singer. Chopin is a mere 39 years old. He died of tuberculosis shortly after this photo was taken. My friend, sitting in her wheelchair with her big warm smile, is in her 80s. Who's happy and who's sad? Just looking at the photos, who would you rather spend the day with? Of course, some say that older persons are a burden to society. They need to be looked after, and as they gradually lose their physical and mental capabilities, they make no contribution to society, and they all get pensions and get lots of free travel. Well, speaking from my own experience, when I was a child in my teens, I had various broken bones and I had eczema. In my 20s, I fell into the Thames when a boat I was in sank, broke some ribs and got very sick, which led to a variety of gynae problems which did not respond to normal treatments, and then I developed problems with my right hand tendons interfering with my piano playing. In my 30s, I had a serious accident to my left knee, which led to rehabilitation for a year until I could walk properly again. And I gave birth to my son, with constant medical checks to see that both he and I were safe. In my 40s, I had an infestation of salmonella, giardia and amoeba in my digestive system, which came very close to killing me. In my 50s, I did rather better, but I did break a finger in one of my hands. In my 60s, before I was even 65, I had a stroke, which took me 2 years to recover from, properly, more or less. I also had a cataract operation, which left me for 8 months with such poor vision that I was almost run over by a cyclist. And I had dental problems from eating glass in a pre-made supermarket sauce, which left me with a full year of regular dental treatment to repair the damage. I also broke my foot. In my 70s, well, my 70s are just about to come up, so I can only wonder what will happen next. Maybe I've just been unlucky, but it seems to me that you don't have to be old to be a burden. You can manage perfectly well to be a burden on the NHS, on carers, on your friends and family at any age. You can find yourself physically incapacitated, temporarily, or even permanently from birth onwards. This is my father on crutches, taken during the Second World War. The sheep he's feeding hides the fact that his right leg is missing, lost when his tank was blown up. For me, he was just my dad, but he was a very courageous man. He had to deal with life-changing disability, but his focus was always not on what he couldn't do, but on what he could do, and he followed this through right to the end of his life. As for mental health, my stroke, when it happened, left me completely unable to speak. I couldn't talk, I couldn't write, I couldn't remember the most mundane things about myself. I couldn't remember my address, my telephone number, my birthday, I couldn't count, let alone add up or sequence numbers. And there was nothing initially to indicate what sort of recovery I might be able to make. My son would be able to tell you about that. He was the carer, looking on, sailing into the unknown with me, having no idea where we were going to end up. What saved us was a ridiculous sense of humour about the extraordinarily ordinary things I could no longer do, and a shared determination that somehow or other things might turn out all right in the end. So then, what about mental health? Senility, dementia, Alzheimer's? These are particularly attached to the ageing, though younger people suffer from them too. And though even over the age of 85, 50% of persons will still remain in good mental health. The other 50%, those who do have mental health problems, seem to provide the reason for a social stigma which rubs off on all older persons. And older persons who are stigmatized feel devalued by others. So now we're getting to the point. It's not the loss of physical or mental capacity which can be impaired at any time. So maybe it's the way we look and the way we sound. We're a bit wrinkly, a bit balder. Our hair's a bit whiter, unless we dye it. And this is what social stigma is about. You perceive something about someone's culture, gender, race, intelligence and health, and I would say Also their age, which sets them apart from you. Their appearance is different from yours, and so it does not produce a natural feeling of empathy in you. You don't really know how they feel, if they feel anything at all. But just a moment. We're talking about culture, gender, race, intelligence, health, and age. That's a whole lot of people you could feel stigma towards. Come on, we can do better than that. Don't be distracted by skin-deep differences. We live in communities that are made up of so many different kinds of people with different backgrounds, different capacities, different attitudes. So why not make room for older persons, the slightly wrinkly sort? And remember, they were young once too. They fell in love, they had their hearts broken, maybe married and brought up children, struggled with downturns in the economy, shared their joys and happiness. And now they've seen it all before, yet they still remember. I still remember what it was like to be young. This is me, aged 3 years old. And on the left, this is my mum, about 9 or 10 years old. Her mum, my grandmother, is beside her, along with 2 aunts. Note the sensible boots and shoes they're wearing. They walked everywhere. And this is my mum on her wedding day with her stepfather just before the ceremony. And here she is in her 70s, spry and lively. So, spry and lively, what do older persons have to offer? Well, what do persons have to offer? Their skills, their knowledge, their life experience, and their love. And if the older people I know have anything to add to that, well, I wouldn't exactly say it's wisdom. After all, there's no fool like an old fool. But it's maybe something to do with having a perspective about life, an overall view that can only be acquired after you've been living for a certain length of time. And sometimes it's their courage, their sheer grit in dealing with life, and their stories, which become an inspiration to us all, sometimes with the most unexpected results. Do you remember Captain Tom walking round his garden 100 times before he was going to be 100 years old? He was aiming to raise a mere £1,000 to support the NHS during the pandemic. The whole nation was so utterly inspired by his tenacity and quiet determination of one so vulnerable that we gave £39 million in recognition of his achievement to help the NHS. Just to remind you, here are some images of Captain Tom alongside music by Chopin that reflects Captain Tom's remarkable dignity and courage, and that the Queen knighted him, Captain Sir Tom. Nevertheless, life is not always so kind to us. This is my friend again. What I did not mention just now is that she has dementia. Last time I saw her, she looked in her diary and asked me, "Are you Gillian? You're written in my diary." "Yes, I'm Gillian," I replied. "Oh, how wonderful to see you," she said, and gave me this big, inspiring smile. She's looked after by a truly loving family, and how could one not love her? So please note, you younger people, keep smiling at your friends and family, keep on good terms with them, keep them inspired, because you never know when you might need them in the future. So what of the future? Do older persons have a future? I googled various websites recently to try to find out how much longer I might have to live. One of them informed me that I would live until I was 103. 33 more years to go. Another whole career. Terrifying. Well, we'll see. However, I feel I owe it to myself and also to my community to stay as fit as possible as I can in mind and body. Not just out of duty, but because it's more fun. You can enjoy yourself more. If I find myself becoming limited in any way, I'll think of my father and think not about the things I can't do, but about the things I can do. So, exercise. I like walking. Healthy eating? Not too many sugary or fat-filled treats. And exploring ways of doing beneficial things that I can enjoy. It's good to find activities that absorb you and take you out of yourself and give you a sense of purpose about life. It doesn't matter much what it is. Art, dancing, golfing, gardening, writing, cooking, reading, model building, collecting. As I'm a musician, my hobby is also my profession. And I have no plans to retire because I love what I do too much ever to want to give it up. And I enjoy sharing these pleasures with other people. I can play to them. I can teach you how to play the piano and just chat about all the ideas that spin off from the music making I do. And is there actually anything good about being older? Well, when you're younger, you get sort of socially wired into being at school, succeeding, being at university, getting a job, keeping your employment, having a family, trying to prove oneself, being overrun constantly by inescapable responsibilities. But now, I feel I've sort of left that all behind. And there's a sense in which I please myself rather more, not in a selfish way, but in opening up a new sense of curiosity about the world and sharing that with the people around me and finding out what they're curious about too. I hope that everyone who's been listening feels more curious about older persons on their International Day. 65. What does that mean to you now? To finish up, I shall give the last word to the composer Chopin, a person who did not reach old age, but whose music inspires us at any age. And thank you for listening.